Hi everyone, there's been a couple of articles recently talking about more cooling measures that might get implemented. Let's explore what these articles are saying and potentially how this might impact your property purchase decision. For easy reference, I've included all links to the articles in the comment section below. The gist of this article is that Singaporean first-time buyers could be subject to ABSD. Property prices in Singapore have already been increasing the past few years, and I really hope the government doesn't implement such measures to penalize genuine first-time Singaporean home buyers. My guess is the government won't do this for three reasons. The first reason is that private property price growth has already slowed down. In 2024, private home prices grew 3.9% year over year, compared with 6.8% in 2023 and 8.6% in 2022. This shows that the three rounds of cooling measures that the government did between 2021 and 2023 is already working. The one segment of the market that has seen accelerating price growth in 2024 was HDB resale, which grew at 9.6% year over year, almost double the rate of 4.9% year over year in 2023. So maybe the government may add some cooling measures for the HDB market like we saw in the past when they introduced the 15-month waiting period for people who sold their private properties and wanted to buy a HDB. But again, I hope they don't, because with HDB prices rising faster than private last year, this has closed the gap and given Singaporeans who are aspiring to own a private property a better chance to make the upgrade. The second reason is household incomes. Property price increases cannot be looked at in isolation without considering household income increases. With incomes forecast to increase in the 2 to 5% range in 2025, my guess and wish is that there won't be any more cooling measures on Singaporean first-time private property buyers. With HDB, however, if 2025 price growth doesn't slow down, there could be a higher chance of more cooling measures for this segment. The third reason is the general election is due this November, and considering that 90% of Singaporeans own their homes, my guess is the government will not add any drastic cooling measures that could send property prices into decline before the election. The second article about cooling measures highlights investors who buy at new launch and sell before TOP, i.e. before the condo is completed. Amongst real estate agents, we call this a sub-sale. And this is where I think the government may probably add cooling measures because it will benefit owner-occupiers rather than investors. The article mentions seller stamp duty, but the question is, what changes could there be to seller stamp duty? Could seller stamp duty rates be increased? Could seller stamp duty holding period be increased? Or could seller stamp duty period start after the building is completed rather than the purchase date at new launch? Let's look at a few data points that could give us some clues to answer those questions. We do need to call out that investors who buy at new launch do add value. Firstly, they provide financing to developers because banks will normally insist that a certain percentage of units are sold at launch before they provide the financing to complete the development. Secondly, for owner-occupiers waiting for 4 years for a new launch to be built could mean paying 4 years of rent. So investors provide this service of enabling owner-occupiers to move into a brand new home without the long waiting period. And thirdly, investors add one more transaction to the chain of events, resulting in more buyer stamp duty for the government, which in turn helps to keep other taxes low. One data point to look at is how much tax revenue came from stamp duty. In fiscal year 23-24, the government already earned 100 million less in stamp duty than the previous fiscal year. So my guess is if there were any additional cooling measures, it will be something gradual rather than drastic. A second data point to look at is what percentage of total condo transactions are sub-sale transactions. In 2024, this was 5%, and it's already reducing from the 6% we saw in 2023. It is also nowhere near the heyday of sub-sale back in 2009 and 2010, which saw double-digit sub-sale percent that led to the seller stamp duty waiting period being increased in 2 steps. First from 1 year to 3 years in 2010, and then from 3 years to 4 years in 2011. It's also worth calling out that in 2017, when the sub-sale percentage had reduced to 1%, the government did relax the seller stamp duty period from 4 years back to 3 years. The third data point to look at is how much gains investors are making compared to the government. The article mentions that investors are making 21% profit on average. Assuming Singaporean investors who sell after 3 years, the government would only make buyer stamp duty when the investor initially bought and then sold to another buyer. And buyer stamp duty is progressive based on transaction price. So assuming a condo bought in 2021 for say 1.5 million and sold in 2024 for 1.8 million, the government would make approximately 7% buyer stamp duty on those two transactions. So the pie is definitely big enough for the government to take a bigger slice by increasing seller stamp duty rates. Another interesting thing about the article is it mentions Morgan Stanley forecasted Singapore property prices to decline 3% in 2024, but based on prelim estimates, prices actually increased 3.9% year over year. It just goes to show how difficult it is to forecast price movements, and I definitely subscribe to the philosophy of time in the market beats timing the market. So in summary from all of the above, my guess is that if the government was to add more cooling measures, it could increase seller stamp duty rates and holding periods to what was in place before 10th March 2017. I would love to hear your point of view. Let me know in the comment section below if you think more cooling measures are needed, and if yes, what would they be? Congrats, you made it to the end. That means you must have found this video helpful. So please subscribe to the channel for more property insights. Thanks, and I'll see you at my next video.